Add me. There we go. I'm your host now. All right, cool. Still figuring this out a little bit. Yep. I want to thank Mike. Great interviews you did here, Mike, and thanks for connecting us. Some really fascinating stuff as always. Got my highly rooted shirt on here. Shout out to Michelle and Troy over there. I love you guys. And I got some really nice Foreman's weed here in my pipe, and I'm super excited here. So let's bring James in. Let's see if I figured out how to do this. James,
how's it going?
Hey, welcome to the show, my man. Let's see. There we go. I like that better. I'm glad to have you here, man. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Cool. I like to start every guest with a little segment I call a 5-minute life story. Would you mind hitting me with one of those, sir?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, my name is James, Marine Corps veteran. I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years and 9 months. Medically retired at this point. I worked at Trulieve from July of 2018 to June of 2020. Worked at multiple sites to include Ben Bostic, Higdon, Juniper Creek, Teloja Creek, and Jefferson County, while also doing some assistant work at the Lee County section called MADCO in Madison County in Lee, Florida. I really liked working there as far as the people went, but as far as management went and like the stuff, all that, it was pretty heinous and the working conditions were pretty heinous. But yeah, I got out, got into IT, and I've been doing that ever since.
Now, James, I always, whenever I get veterans on, I like to ask them to share as much as they're comfortable sharing about their time in the military, if that's something you wouldn't mind talking about.
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps January 2009. Went to Parris Island, South Carolina. Was part of a 3rd Battalion Lima Company. My MOS was a 3112, which is a Distribution Management Operations Specialist. It's a really fancy way of saying logician. Logistics is my bread and butter. It's something I'm really good at, and it's something that I enjoy, just overall, because I look at that as like the circulatory system of a company. Without logistics, there's no blood getting to the heart, and which or in this case, finished products getting out to the end pieces of the company. And so logistics is a really big thing, and that's why I enjoyed the role that I had when I was at Trulieve as far as like what I did. But it was really about it between my employees and me. That was really about it in a nutshell. But yeah, I kind of went all over the place. I had a chance to travel the world a little bit. Wasn't really anything to write home about, but had some good times, made some good memories, made some really odd friends that I wouldn't trade for the world. One of my best friends from the Marine Corps actually became my best friend because he slid into my room drunk, didn't know who he was. I had my door open to my barracks room, and he slid in on his knees and bit the shit out of me. So bad that it left a bruise on my elbow for 3 weeks. Yeah, he was being chased by the people on fire watch that night doing building security, and because he was outside without shoes on. And I was video calling my fiance at the time, and I remember he looked at me, he looked at her, and he goes, "Hi," and then he took off because they were like, "I think he went in here," and he took off out the hallway. I didn't see him again until the next day. And I was like, "Yo, hey man, I need to talk to you." And he's like, "Who are you?" And I just held my arm up, and he was like, "Oh, that happened?" And I was like, yeah, that happened. Bro, I thought I dreamed that. I was like, what in the world? So like when I tell people, like people ask me what the Marine Corps was like, I'm like, it's that's it in a nutshell. Every now and then you'll find stuff like shot out training, AT4s you can chug whiskey out of if you know what you're doing and how to acquire it and other things.
Isn't that a rocket launcher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You find them because they're single use. So once you fire them, they're essentially no good. And people have ways of acquiring stuff in the Marine Corps. And the best thing is just don't ask questions. And they're like, "Yo, dude, we could totally like drink out of this." You know what? You're right. We could. Are we? Oh, we are. Okay. All right.
So James, so what made you decide to transition from the military and get into the cannabis industry?
So funny. I actually was a corrections officer. I got
No shit.
into yeah, I got into corrections. I was working 91 hours a week. The pay was trash, and I was exhausted all the time. I could never see my kid. And I remember it was around Thanksgiving of 2017. During the holidays, there's always a lot more fights. People are upset, and they're missing their families and stuff, and so people fight more. Being one of like 3 male officers on that shift, excuse me. Anytime there was a fight, naturally I got called to it, and I was super mad because it was my first day being in the light security section of the prison. So it was supposed to be an easy day, and they kept having fights in what we called the dungeon, which is where we kept all our high security people. And so I'm having to run from one end of the prison all the way down through like 7 sets of steel doors. And like I'm calling the doors on the radio as I'm running, just just like officer so to central pop blah 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 blah. Like so when it gets there, it's and it doesn't open, but it's loose, and so I'd hit it with my shoulder and I'd keep trucking. But in that day, I managed to tear both of my shoulders because of the amount of fights that I was in, and somebody grabbed one of them when I was trying to break up a big old fight. I ended up with labrum tears in both shoulders, bursitis in both shoulders, and cysts in both shoulders. And so I was on medical leave for a little bit, and they were finally like, look, we don't have any light duty positions available. So like, could you just like resign? And I was like, sure, whatever. And I had a buddy that worked for Trulieve in the maintenance department. And he was like, man, I know it's a long way away, but I got this place that just opened. It's a good chance to get promoted. You can start at the bottom, and because they're brand new, it'll be easy to climb. And I was like, say less. I did not know that it was 136 miles one way. Yeah, it was a long drive.
Say, because I remember you talking about this a little bit, how far you were traveling every day just to get there.
Yeah, it was 136.8 miles one way. So I would have to leave the house by 4:45 in the morning to get to work by 8 o'clock. It was rough. But
didn't you say you ended up camping out in the parking lot for a couple of weeks because it was so much fun?
Yeah, because when we were opening the Midway production facility, so that they could take production out of Ben Bostic and it could have its own building and stuff, we were given a deadline of 2 weeks. And we were essentially working 8 a.m. to midnight every day, like Monday through Sunday, to meet this deadline. And I slept in my car because by the time I'd have got home, it would have been, 3:45 in the morning. So I would have got an hour of sleep if I fell asleep in the yard. And so I was just like, no. And since there were showers at Trulieve and like a little mini locker room, I would just like put my stuff in there, and then I would shower at work. I even got me a little rubber ducky to have up there and like put it in the shower. And I'd be in there, rubber ducky, you're the one, just in case anybody was walking around, they'd be like, who is this weirdo? But yeah,
leave him alone. He's got his duck.
Right. Yeah, but
what was the starting pay like when you got hired up there, James?
$10 an hour.
$10.
Yep. And then after 60 days, it was supposed to automatically go up to 1050. Mine went up to 1048 because my manager, I guess, didn't like me, which was really unfortunate because I really liked him. But
so what, they stiffed you on a couple pennies an hour?
Yeah, 2 cents an hour. It's all right though, because after he left and I ended up becoming a lead of the department, I got them to back pay me every hour to those 2 cents for every hour. It actually totaled out to over $100 by the time it was done. But if you counted my overtime, I was like, yes. I don't know who had to crunch those numbers, but I feel really bad for him because I kept all of them. I still have pay stubs from when I worked at Trulieve, like before it was even Trulieve, and it still said George Hackney Incorporated. Like I still have those. I don't know why, but I do. I found them when I moved. I was like, oh snap.
And but, so what exactly, what position were you hired to do there when you first started?
Initially I was a material handler, but within 4 months, maybe 6, within 4 to 6 months, I was a lead. So they had this woman whose name was Melissa, and she was what they call a buyer. Her job is to take purchase requests and contact the people who provide our supplies and stuff. And she was to essentially set up contracts and long-term purchase agreements, etc. Well, she was 6 months behind. And I'm a techie guy. I'm really big on tech and stuff. And And the manager comes up to him and he's like, James, you know about computers and stuff, right? I was like, yeah, yeah, I do. Well, I'm gonna pass you over to Melissa for the day. You're gonna help her. And I was okay. And so I walked in there. She gave me a quick run through. At the time, they were using SharePoint, and she gave me a quick run through on how to do it. And she was like, "Look, just do as much as you can. Whenever you get tired of doing it, just let me know, and we'll call it for the day. And you can go back to doing your regular job." And I was like, "Okay." Well, that was at like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. At about 4:15, I walk in there with this stack of papers she had given me, and I set them down, and I'm like, "I'm done." She was like, "Oh, you giving up?" And I was like, "No, I'm done." And she was like, "What do you mean you're done?" I'm done. Like, they're completed. And she goes, no. So she like starts pulling random ones out of the stack, and she was just checking them, you know, just you can hear her over there just in the background, just going at it. And anyway, she was like, "Huh, how did you do 6 months worth of work in like 6 hours?" And I was like, I just did. And so from then on, I got put in charge of putting in purchase requests and GRPOs, which stands for Good Receipt Purchase Orders. So essentially, I was in charge of doing all of the purchase requests for all of the departments at Ben Bostic. And then it upgraded from Ben Bostic to Ben Bostic and Higdon and Juniper Creek and Chaloja Creek, because I was assisting their people who did that had just started doing it. And I ended up being the trainer for all of them, which was really annoying because now I'm training like 4 people and I'm not getting any extra pay, and I still have to keep up with my workload. And then they tacked on, hey, you're going to train and certify people on forklift operations. So now I'm also having to kick classes on how to safely operate a forklift. And I ended up being train the trainer certified through Toyota. And so I'm giving everybody that needs forklift certifications their forklift certifications, and I'm trying to kick these classes, and I'm trying to remediate with people who have had accidents and all this other stuff. And so I'm doing all of that, training people and trying to do my job. And it was killing me. It was brutal, but I was doing all of that for $10.50 an hour. By the time I became a lead, I was making like 14 an hour. It was like 14 and some change, but that was a lot of work for $14 an hour.
Yeah, and I feel like somewhere in here, I believe you mentioned you did some like medical transcriptionist work or something.
That was when I worked at a neurological institute. I was a medical transcriptionist, and which is essentially where I got my first bit of my toes being dipped in the medical field, and it's also where I developed my very adamant hatred for essentially pills. Because we had I remember we had a patient come in. We had just written him a prescription for Vicodin like the day before, and he comes in telling us he has taken a whole month's worth of Vicodin in less than 12 hours, or less than 24 hours. And we were like, "Sir, you would be dead. Like, you would not be here." And he tried to attack our receptionist, and I jumped off of the balcony because it was an old house that had been converted into a doctor's office. And so I jumped off this balcony like a spider monkey because I was the only male in the office that wasn't a doctor, and I was in my 20s at the time, you know, so I was real gung-ho and, you know, full of piss and vinegar. And so I jump off like a spider monkey, and you know, I kind of go at him and get him to leave her alone because she was only like 17 at the time, and she was just just a tiny little receptionist. And I think he threw a lamp at her. I don't really remember what it was that set me off, but I was like, no, we're not doing that. And so, yeah, but I actually was able to keep my job after that. They were like, look, you cannot do that. But
well, I only asked because it sounded like maybe there was some crossover from that work into what you ended up doing at Trulieve.
I mean, in a way, kind of. I don't know. It helped me learn to type faster, which I was already pretty fast anyway. But you know, having the medical background and the medical experience, it kind of made it a little easier for me to understand some of the stuff.
Yeah, like data entry and shit like that.
Yeah, I did a lot of data entry.
Yeah.
A lot.
So I'd like to back you up a little and just talk. I'd like to dig into what you did as in the material handling area, like explicitly what your duties were and what sort of materials you're handling.
Yeah. Man, I wish I'd have known. I got a list around here somewhere of everything that we ever ordered while I worked there. But everything from isopropyl 70% and 90% to just basic nutrients, hydrogen peroxide, to all the way to liquid nitrogen. We had a leak in a liquid nitrogen tank, one of the big like 500-gallon tanks or however big they are, however many gallons they are, but they're about as tall as I am. But anyway, it started leaking. I used it to cool my drinks off because I couldn't get the leak to stop. And so they come in, it's just liquid nitrogen just shooting out, and there's a Coke can held in with a piece of paper, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, we had a leak. I called it in. Nobody's here. Might as well use it."
Like, what are you doing? Is the question.
Right? What are you doing? But
you just hired me for $10 an hour. Like, surely there's a guy who gets paid more to deal with shit like leaky gas tanks.
Yeah, and but on top of that, it was inventory management, activated charcoal. That was a big one, and I am pretty sure I'm eventually going to get cancer from that because I have a picture somewhere on my phone where I was told to go inventory a Connex box because we didn't have any warehouse space, so everything was kept in Connex boxes, ISO containers, C containers, whatever you want to call them. And so it's really cramped in there. They're really tiny, and you're climbing over all of this stuff. And well, I was told to go inventory some stuff for, I think it was building 2 or building 3 was opening up, and they wanted to make sure that they had everything. I told them we did. I was like, look, I counted it as I put it in. They were like, well, go count it again. Okay. But there's activated charcoal like all over the floor of this ISO container or this Connex box because that's where they used to keep it. And it's about an inch thick on the floor of it. And I'm trying to like climb over all these boxes and pallets one day. Well, one of the boxes, it gave way and I fell and I caught the corner of my eye on a pallet and I landed on my side, wedged in between some boxes, and I couldn't stand up. And because I was slammed in, and I had this charcoal just all over my face, and I'm breathing it in, and I'm coughing, and I'm gagging, I'm yelling for help, and excuse me, and I was able to eventually kind of just like worm my way up to where I could kind of push my elbow out and stand up. But I took a picture because my manager or the site manager at the time was like, "Hey, did you get it done?" And I was so mad that I couldn't even say, yeah. I just sent a picture with a thumbs up and my face just covered in this charcoal. And I was mad. But like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get cancer from that at some point. I'm going to die.
Well, and you said, if I recall correctly, you said, and for people who, like most of the people that watch my show are in Vermont. You're in Florida. You're in the probably fucking hot sun inside of a metal container filled with barrels of
the containers. The containers got up to the highest one I saw was 146 degrees. And once I became a lead, I actually told my team, do not ever, under any circumstance, go in one of those containers by yourself. Do not do it. One of you stands at the door and the other one walks in. If the person that walks in passes out, do not go get that person. Get someone else, because I have a friend whose brother actually passed away trying to save someone who passed out in a ship. There was a chemical leak in a ship, and he went down to go save him. He got about halfway up the ladder with him and passed out, and they both passed away. And that's something that's always stuck with me. So I always tell them, look, if somebody passes out, do not go get them. You call me while you're looking for me. Do not go get them. And
this is like a problem like that you probably wouldn't see at a lot of smaller operations, because they have very limited amounts of those type of chemicals. But when you're dealing with something on the scale of Trulieve, like, boy, that could become a serious. Well, it sounds like even it could become a serious safety problem.
Yeah, and even the heat alone, once you get towards the back of the trailer where there's no door, it's hard to breathe because the air is so hot. It's like being in an oven. And so you breathe and your lungs hurt and you're just not getting enough air. Now you mix in used isopropyl and everything else that's in there and all these other chemicals that they have. And it is not a good time. I had to do
what about respirators? Did they provide you guys with any kind of respirators or anything like that?
So they had N95 masks, but in order to utilize the N95 mask, you had to go through a fit test where they took you in and they got you measured for your mask. And the only people that we were told could have them were the IPM guys, which were the dudes who put on like the full hazmat suits and would go spray these chemicals in the rooms. One of the things I loved about Trulieve is that they said everything that goes on their plants is safe if it's safe, why do you need a biohazard suit to go spray it in the rooms with the plants?
That sounds like some Monsanto talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked that question a lot, and they were just like, well, it's because of the how everything's compacted in there, and I'm like, that still doesn't make it safe to go on plants, though. You're not answering my question.
Do
I don't
you know
care
what type of chemicals they were using to spray on the plants?
If I was to pull that sheet up, I think it's behind me in a bag. If I could pull it up,
maybe we'll do a follow-up and we could get the sheet out. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, because it's this nice little sheet that I made. It was all color coordinated and everything. They were also real finicky about like their nutrients and stuff. I can't recall the name of the company we got our stuff from off the top of my head, but it was a place that Andrew Guy, who is the master grower at Trulieve, who used to work at Fat Panda, and who allegedly, we were told brought seeds from Fat Panda to help with the beginning stages of Trulieve. Again, that's allegedly. I'm not putting that down as like a definite, but
thank you. I appreciate allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. But because one of the things I like to do doing purchase requisitions was I want to save the company money. And I was under the impression that if I could save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, that we could get raises. So I had a financial motivator for this. And so naturally I go around and I'm calling all these companies that produce the same stuff that we use. And I'm like, hey, what would a contract like, with you guys be like? Now, mind you, this is way beyond the scope of my position. And
sounds like
and I don't have the authority to like sign off any contracts. And I'm very upfront with these people. I'm like, look, I just do purchase requisitions. I'm not a buyer. But if I could look over a potential contract with you guys and just get a rough estimate, because I know that everything can be, debated on ups and downs, can I please get one? Well, I got one that was pretty good, and it would have saved us in the neighborhood of, it was like $130,000 every 2 weeks. So $260,000 a month. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I like write up this proposal for Andrew and them. And I'm like, hey, I found this company that produces all of the same stuff and we can get it cheaper. And we can get it more consistently because they actually have warehouses in Florida with storage, because all of our stuff was coming on a per order basis from halfway across the country, actually all the way from across the country. It was either Washington or Oregon. And anyway, these are people that Andrew used when he worked at Fat Panda. And I guess they had a little niche, because the second I sent that proposal up, Andrew comes into my office and he was like, where did you get those numbers? And I was like, dude, I do purchase requisitions. I see the prices of everything. And he was like, yeah, but who told you to do that? And I was like, nobody told me to do it. It's everybody's job to make sure that we save money where we can. That's kind of the job, as long as it's safe, we should be able to save money. And he goes, not with this. You don't, we're not getting away from these people. And I was like, okay, because the way he said it, and for those who don't know, Andrew's a really big guy. He's big. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". He's a big dude. And so he utilizes that, he like stands over you, and and the way he said it, it was like, if you try that again, I'm going to f you up. And
what was his position there at Trulieve?
Master grower. That was his title. Okay. He was on if I remember correctly, a $300,000 a year contract.
He didn't want you fucking with his chemical orders or whatever.
Yeah. And
even if it would have saved the company a lot of money, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it would have saved. Yeah, we were looking at saving hundreds of thousands of dollars like every month, and that was just for the Ben Bostic location. That wasn't even calculating the amount of money that would be saved between Higdon, Juniper Creek, Delosia Creek. That was
what are the sizes of these? Sorry to interrupt you, but like, what's the scale of these locations, like square footage wise? What are we talking here?
I couldn't even give you a square footage. Like the outdoor places were huge; they were enormous. Ben Bostic was broken up. By the time I left, it was 8 separate buildings with one large. So you had one large building which housed like the administrative staff, the warehouse. It was not a warehouse. There was no way to get a forklift in there or anything. It was just a walkway.
I think you call them shotgun warehouses or something.
Well, Midway has a shotgun warehouse. But Ben Bostic, it was literally, if I had to ballpark distance, 35 yards. And it was just wide enough to pull a pallet jack down. It was just, and you could not store anything in there. Like what we would do is we would unload stuff off of trucks with pallet jacks, then push it to the edge and get it with forklifts and go shove it in a Connex box. And that was generally how we would do that, because the truckers would just back up to the dock, and it was simpler than trying to tell every semi truck that came through, like, hey, just pull forward and we'll unload you. Granted, we eventually ended up doing that anyway, because we just didn't have the space to start unloading the trucks. And it was very, very annoying. And it was very dangerous. I still have a PowerPoint that I made addressing the dangers of unloading cocoa trucks, because they used cocoa soil in their plants, or for their plants. And the way it would work is, because we didn't have a way to get the forklifts in the trucks, they were all unloaded by a pallet jack, and each pallet weighed somewhere in the neighborhood of between 2,000 and 2,400 pounds, or 2,800 pounds. And so I know it's like that uphill both ways kind of thing, but the way the trucks would park where we put the cocoa, you were pushing the pallets uphill out the back of the truck so that the forklift operator could pick them up, and assuming that the pallet didn't snap on the way, but get it, drive it off. And then while he's dropping the cocoa pallet off, you were back there getting between these pallets, hoping you don't get crushed as you push it, because if you lose your grip or you lose your traction and you slip, it's going to crush you between these 2,400 pound pallets. And so I generally would put one of my guys on the forklift, and then I would hop inside the truck, because I don't want anybody else to get crushed. And to be honest, I think that was my depression talking as much as it was as me wanting everyone to go home, because it was like, look, if it happens, it happens. But I would rather it happen to me than somebody else. But go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was going to say there. I had another note in here about trip hazards that you mentioned, and something about can't use the top racks. I was taking some notes on the
So we had trip hazards everywhere. We had electrical cables, like extension cords and stuff, running all over the place. And they tried to buy us these little these little things to drive over with the forklifts, but I mean, when you've got hundreds of feet of cable all over the place, there's only so much you can do. And then with the top racks, that was at Midway. So we were wrapping up those 2 weeks of bringing in supplies and trying to get everything ready. So I'm not a driver, but because the drivers were having to drive during the day, they needed people that could deliver the materials that for the site from Ben Bostic to Midway. And they just handed it to the material handlers, and they were like, hey, get in the trucks and drive this over there. So build the pallets, build and wrap the pallets, load the pallets onto the trucks, drive the trucks over there, unload the pallets, and drive the trucks back over, rinse, repeat. And we did that all night long. And, get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, start all over again until midnight. And, anyway, so we did that. But I remember doing a walkthrough. Again, my profession in the military was a logistician, a distribution management operations specialist. Like, that was my title. And I looked up at these racks and I said, they're not going to be able to use those. And Tom, my manager, was like, what do you mean? I said, those top racks are too close to the fire suppressant system. They cannot use them. And I remember they were like, well, the fire marshal or whoever's doing the inspection, they haven't come by and given the yes or no on that. So what makes you a specialist? And I told them my title and everything. And I was like, look, I'm telling you, I've done this in multiple countries across the globe. I'm federally certified. I'm telling you, that's not going to fly. And sure enough, they come out and did the inspection, and they were like, can't use those top racks. And I was just like, excellent. Just put the fingers together, little evil fingers.
It's weird that they hire people who are good at things and then ignore their advice when they're trying to tell them stuff.
Because that would involve Kim Rivers having to spend more of her money and admitting that she was wrong. And you can't have that. You can't tell the lady that drives the Tesla Model S that she is incorrect.
I'm surprised that's all she's driving. I want to ask you.
She had more than one.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to ask you about OSHA. How have they come to the sites a lot? Have there been a lot of OSHA violations at the site? I'm curious about that stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorites, they never got fined for it because they never got caught, was putting a piece of pallet board down. And look, every blue-collar Joe in North Florida has probably done it, but putting a piece of plywood down on a forklift and then raising it up to the roof of the building because they didn't have a way to get a ladder up there, Nah, but between that, I've seen electrical cables completely submerged in water. I think I talked about it on my last interview with Mike. Lake OSHA, which was essentially what would look like a puddle, but it's I'd say about 3/4 the size of this room that I'm in, as far as like width and length. And it was deep. It was over 7 feet deep. And like if you were to drop a forklift in there with it full of water, you wouldn't be able to see the forklift. It would
This was inside a building or something?
No, it was right next to a building. It was right next to Building 6 at Jefferson County. And it was there for months. Yeah, it had tape around it for all of like 3 days, and bad weather
Like a
came through.
sinkhole or something?
I guess they were trying to run some kind of drain line to fix the sewage leak that they had across the walkway, because there was literal sewage leaking onto where the employees had to walk, and you had to walk whether it was storming or if it had ever snowed, rain, sleet, or hail, you're walking 1/4 of a mile in that weather. And that if it's raining, and if it's raining, it's going to back up and it's going to run all down it, and you're walking through this stuff in your tennis shoes, and you're going to work in essentially poo water all day long. It's gross. And you're in there with these plants and everything, and you've got water on your feet. And a bunch of people called about that, and they hired the people who put it in to try to fix it, and while I was there, they never did.
You got people walking through shit water and then going into the cultivation spaces.
Yeah, it was disgusting. And not only that, it stank. It was so bad. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one of the few times I was glad I was on a forklift, because look, when you're on a forklift, everybody needs you. You don't ever get to stop, because everybody needs something. And I couldn't really do my purchase requisitions as often as I needed to, because I was short staffed. So I'm doing purchase requisitions, good receipt purchase orders, training, and I'm having to do the in-house delivery at Jeffco, because I went like a year before I had a team. And so I'm doing all of this stuff, doing all these building expansions by myself. And so I was lucky that I got to drive through that with the forklift versus actually having to like walk through it and get it all over my feet. It was gross. If they had told me to walk through that, I'd told them to kick rocks. I'd have gone home.
Wow.
I'd have gone home. There was also, and I won't even say allegedly on this, because I know for a fact that it was illegal. When I was still at Ben Bostic, right before I went to Jefferson County, Massachusetts has different laws regarding chemicals than Florida. So there was, I cannot remember the name of it. I'd have to look at it. It was like Myocazole or something like that. But it was a chemical that's allowed in Florida, but it's not allowed in Massachusetts. Andrew Guy comes in with this jug of this stuff, and
no, maybe.
No, it was like MYACOZOL or something. CYAZOL. I'd have to look at it. It was a complicated name, but anyways, he was like, "Hey, I need you to send this to Adam up in Massachusetts," because I had been training Adam Shalou, who was the site manager up until recently up there, and I was like, "Well, where do I send it?" He said, "Send it to his house," and I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Weren't you in the military?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "So to just follow orders and don't ask questions." When I tell you, I almost bit my tongue off.
So they're kind of using your military experience to get you to fucking do things without asking questions. Wow.
Yeah, but one of the things that people don't realize is they teach in the military to ask questions. Like, if you think something's wrong or like illegal, you're supposed to question that all day. And I did. And anyway, but so I went and I looked it up, and it was banned in Massachusetts. But they were trying to jumpstart the growth process in Massachusetts because it was just starting up. They were just getting plants up there. And he told me to ship it to somebody's house.
So they're sending banned chemicals to a state, or sending chemicals
to a state where it's banned.
In Florida to a state where they're banned. Wow.
Yeah. And I only had to do that one time. And I think it's because they realized that I was not cool with that. Just like the whole patient information thing, where I refused to dispose of patient information because on returns, what they were doing is they had these clear plastic trash bags, and they would just throw these returns in these trash bags, like all the paperwork that came with them. The returns themselves would go into a crate, but the paperwork, would get put into a clear trash bag and then just tossed in a dumpster. Well, as a medical transcriptionist, part of my job was patient information destruction, right? HIPAA enforcement. And I was like, yo, I went to Tom and I was like, this is bad. This is illegal. You realize like every one of these names is like a minimum of $3,000 hit per name per bag. So if you've got 700 patients' names in there, that's $3,000 times 700, and you've got like 30 bags. So 700 times 30 times 3,000. That's how many dollars are going to be charged or billed to Trulieve if somebody finds out.
That's because the fine if you get caught like exposing.
Yeah, it was, it's like, it was like $3,000. And so the only ways you can do it is pulverize it until it's unreadable, shred it, or burn it. Those are the only 3 options allowed by HIPAA when it comes to the destruction of patient information. And just the audacity and the condescending tone they had when they asked me that question, what makes you a specialist? And I looked and I said, Tom, you hired me. You read my resume. You know what I used to do for a living. I was a medical transcriptionist. Like, patient information was my forte. And he was like, well, I don't know anything about that. So me being the person that I am, I went and I printed out the HIPAA book. And right there, when you open it, right there on the index, the very first thing is patient information, confidentiality, and destruction. Right there. And I was like, ta-da! And they got super pissed at me about that. And I was like, so until y'all fix this, I am not doing returns. I will not be doing returns because I will not be the low man on the totem pole that gets crucified when y'all get fined. I'm not doing it. And I walked away and they're yelling at me. Go ahead, fire me for it. Please fire me for it. I need a check. Please fire me.
Why do you think someone would be mad about you bringing
because they didn't. So the way it worked is when it got brought up to the upper echelon, like Kim and them, hey, we need to spend $3,000, right? Jeremy Davis was one of the big. I'm on an interview. Jeremy Davis was one of the biggest jerks I've ever witnessed in my life. We call him JD, and he thinks it's a nickname, but it's actually because none of us can stand to say his name. So JD, who towards the end there was responsible for overlooking all the books and financially, you would go ask him, hey, we need $3,000 for an industrial shredder. And he would look at you and be like, no, you don't. And you would then say, legally, yes, we do. And then he would look at you and go, no, you don't. And that was it. We ended up getting a big tub grinder one time that cost stupid amounts of money. It was like $30,000. It was a huge tub grinder. The dry team is out there utilizing it at the Higdon site. And JD comes out there, says they're not working fast enough because they don't know what they're doing. He then proceeds to do it on his own and jam this brand new machine and ruin a $30,000 piece of equipment because he didn't believe they were working fast enough. That's the kind of person he was. We asked for forklift ramps, and instead of going and getting professionally like pre-built ramps, they hired contractor buddies of theirs to build some for us that when it was raining, we couldn't even drive the forklifts up them. Like, so they told us, put the forklift in reverse, get some distance, build up speed, and go up the ramp. What? I'm sorry. Do I need to install a horn on this forklift that goes because I'm not doing that. And yeah, I was like, that is dangerous. That is so dangerous. And I told my guys, I said, if I catch one of y'all doing that, I will personally beat your ass. Do not. Well, what if no. I don't care who tells you. I don't care if Kim comes down here in her little Tesla and tells you in her pretty little suits and her hair up in a ponytail to do it. You tell her to fuck off, because I'm not sending one of you to the morgue because some person who makes more in a day than you make in a month tells you to do it. No. You are more important than their paycheck. And they were like, okay. Because most of my guys were Latino, right? And they're hard workers and they do what you tell them to do. That's a
good segue that we're definitely getting to, James.
Yeah. And, because it was, I remember it was Iber Cassius, Isidro Grande, and Jose Izzy. Those were my top 3 performers, along with Duran Pugh and Cormac Cavanaugh. Those were my guys, and I took care of them. But my hardest workers that were always pulling like massive amounts of overtime were my Latino guys. And they were the ones that you could tell them to do something. They didn't ask questions. They just say, okay. And then they go do it. And you're like, well, bro, that is dangerous. So don't do that. Don't do that. And people took advantage of that. They were always pulling my guys off to do other tasks and stuff, and I'd have to step in and intervene and be like, no, man, get your own team. Get your own team to do it. Well, they're busy. Well, my guys are busy too, so fuck off. Leave my guys alone. And but yeah, it was just they were trying to get us to do dangerous stuff. So instead of buying like a pre-built, mind you, Trulieve brags about how much money they make in cannabis. They brag about it all the time. Could not be bothered to buy a $17,000 forklift ramp. So they had one made by their buddies for $3,000. And I'm like, this is unsat. You're just because you're trying to, I don't know if they were trying to impress the board of directors or what, but that was inexcusable to put profits over employee safety when you make millions of dollars a year in profit after it's been taxed, after everyone's been paid millions of dollars in profit. And you can't be, pardon my French, but you can't be fucked to spend $17,000 on a ramp.
Or you said $3,000 on a paper shredder or something?
Yeah, it was like $3,000 on an industrial paper shredder. And to be honest, I don't even think it cost that much. But yeah, they didn't want to buy that. Then they lied and said they got one, and they put it at Midway. Well, dude, I was all over the place. I was at all the sites. I go to Midway and I'm, hey, yo, let me see that shredder, man. Let me see it. Because look, putting stuff through a shredder is just, it's nice. And they're like, what shredder? And I was like, what do you mean what shredder, man? They said y'all got the big industrial shredder, dude. I want to see it. Bro, we don't have a shredder. I don't know what you're talking about. Let me pull this email up real quick and just they said you got a shredder. And
your video's lagging a little bit, James. But
yeah, I'm moving too much.
No, so how do you, I mean, I guess I was going to ask you about the management, but it sounds like it was just not great. I mean, they're putting you in unsafe positions. There's OSHA violations everywhere. You also mentioned something about maybe improper disposal of certain types of chemicals and stuff.
Yeah, so we had at Ben Bostic what we called the East End warehouse. So when you go through the gate, the building is shaped like this. So you pull in right here, and this is the East End warehouse. And the East End warehouse had a drain that was in there back when this was a tomato processing plant. And so when I got hired, they were just dumping anything and everything that they had that was extra down in it. And another job I had before I joined here, because when I got out of the military, I kind of bounced around from job to job trying to figure out where I fit in. And I used to work for this company called Crystal Clean, Heritage Crystal Clean. And we worked with the EPA and stuff like that to dispose of hazardous chemicals, and solvents and stuff like that, and parts washers and parts cleaners and stuff. And I saw that and I nearly had a stroke. I was like, that's illegal. Now, mind you, all of this is taking place in like the first 6 months that I get there. Like all of this illegal stuff is going on. And I'm like my eyes twitching, and I'm like, dude, if somebody from up here in the feds who knew all of this, which I would never expect the feds to have knowledge on anything, but if someone up in the feds knew the laws about this stuff and came here and did a real inspection, we would be shut down. We'd be shut down yesterday. That's how quickly they would shut us down, because this is illegal. I actually oversaw and helped oversee and create the hazmat disposal process along with his name was Brad. He ended up being the head of health and safety there for a little bit before he was fired. And I remember this specifically because it was my mother's birthday. It was February 7th of 2019. And I remember, like I said, because it was my mom's birthday and I had to work major overtime, cutting open barrels and stuff to use as like drain barrels to move stuff and consolidate it so that we could put it in these Connex boxes and save space. And that was the first step. And then I think we only had trucks come haul them off twice. And then I never saw trucks come haul off chemicals again after that. But I transferred shortly after. So, but I don't think they carried up a contract after.
Yeah, that was really troubling to hear, man. Boy, and especially when you're dealing with that scale, we just got barrels of fucking, I don't know, whatever, isopropyl, peroxide, whatever you got.
Yeah. And there was types of acid, and all kinds of goodies. I had to go in and do a barrel inventory one day, a chemical inventory, and I'm crawling all over these barrels. There's no protective equipment on because we just didn't have any, and like I ended up having a piece of metal run through my hand one time, and I got in trouble for not wearing gloves. I was never issued gloves. I was never issued gloves, but I was like, okay. So I took my write up and whatever. But so I go into this Connex box with no respirator, no cover for my clothes. I'm getting covered in all of these chemicals, and I'm getting to the back and I'm counting. And I actually still have this notebook somewhere, this journal. I found it when I moved, and there's, as you can see, chemicals like all over it. I probably should like throw it away, but I'm worried if I burn it, it'll be really bad. But anyway, I'm on the way back out after I count these barrels, and I start getting very lightheaded. And I've been in this position before, and I'm like, oh no, I'm passing out. I'm passing out. I'm passing out. And like I'm aware enough to know this, and I start booking it, just crawling on my hands and knees trying to get to the edge of this thing. And like I remember getting to the edge, and I knew I was at the edge, but I was so out of it that I still put my hand down as if there was another barrel, and I flip out of this Connex box and I roll forward, I slam back, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm just trying to like all this fresh oxygen, and I'm just like, and Jordan Miranda, who was the site manager at the time, walked by, and he looked at me and he said, "James, you okay?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'm good. It's hot though. I'm just hot." And he was like, "Okay," and then walked off. And I was like, "Yeah, It's funny because I'm also the reason that we got breakable lanyards. We didn't used to have breakable lanyards. We had solid straps, and they had me throwing away these these little sprayers like you would find in your grandma's garden. You know, these little 9-gallon MFG sprayers. I have no idea how I remember that, but anyway, and finally they were like, "Hey, we're gonna get rid of these, throw them away." And I was like, "Well, what about the stuff that's in them?" And they were like, "Just throw it in the dumpster." And I was like, "Okay." And so I'm taking these things, and some of them are half full, so they're really heavy, and I'm tossing them into the dumpster. Well, they have like nozzles and all over them and handles, and one of them catches my lanyard and snatches me, and I'm dangling from the dumpster with this thing around my neck. I ended up with this wicked bruise on my neck for like 2 weeks. But I was sitting there like being strangled by an MFG sprayer. And I to be honest, I don't know who came and got me loose because I was suffocating. I don't know who pulled me off, but I never went to the hospital. Now that I think about it, yeah,
That's the third time you've almost died at work here.
yeah. I look back at it. That was like a lot of red flags, man. I definitely should have seen that. I don't know. I was just so desperate to, make sure that my wife and my daughter were taken care of that. I don't know. I grew up working like that, doing really dangerous stuff. And so I guess I just never really thought about it until now, really.
The weed industry is the most dangerous thing.
Yeah, it's more dangerous than the Marine Corps in a lot of aspects. Yeah,
I want to circle back before I forget about this because you touched on it a little, and I want to talk about the immigration thing because that was super fucked up. And I'd like you to just lay that out a little bit because, yeah.
So, naturally, with it being North Florida, for those who aren't from the area that don't know, there's a huge Latino and Latina community. And a lot of them do manual labor, like they work in orange orchards and just doing agricultural stuff. And cannabis comes into the scene, and when the tomato processing plant shut down, Trulieve bought it out and essentially kept all of the employees that were there on. Well, not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And naturally, they tell their families, "Hey, look, we got this place opening up. You can work here and you can get a check and yada yada yada." And so there ended up being a huge abundance of Latino employees, especially on the harvest team, which was really weird. Like, why is the one team that's like outside and pulls more hours than anybody? Why are they all Latino? They're all like, this isn't like a 90% thing. This is like 100% of the employees on the harvest team are Latino. Why? And so the immigration put out this thing, and this is kind of what Claudia said last week. They put out this notice essentially stating that cannabis is not recognized as gainful employment, and Trulieve is owned by an attorney. Kim Rivers is an attorney. She's a lawyer. This is supposed to be her specialty. She's supposed to know this stuff. And then when it was brought to management's
He does.
attention, when it was brought to management's attention, they essentially brushed it under the rug and were like, don't worry about it. Well, that didn't sit well with Claudia. Well, Claudia's a driver, so she goes to all the sites. She goes to all of them. So she takes the printout in English and Spanish and puts it by the time clocks. And management makes her take them all down. Well, then Claudia goes and passes them out. Like, hey, well, if I can't have it by the time clock, there's nothing stating I can't give it to these employees. And, Claudia was going around telling them like, hey, look, you should probably go get an attorney. You should probably go like get a lawyer, and just make sure that you're good. And Trulieve, after all of this went down and people were quitting left and right, after a whole bunch of people quit and the harvest team really began to struggle, Trulieve put out this half-assed, heartfelt notice about how they're working to pass legislation to, make this null and void so that, cannabis counts as actual work time towards your work visas and your status here in the country and yada, yada, yada. And anyone with two brain cells to rub together knows that nothing like that happens within the span of 3 months. You're out of your mind. Plus, not every one of these people has that much time, and so for them to just let these people work and pretend like they were oblivious to it.
Like, yeah, a lot of those J1 visa and those type of programs, it seems like it's like 3 months, right? Like we have a lot of that up here in Vermont at the restaurants. You come for 3 months, you do your work,
seasonal.
Maybe you take a college class or something, and then they bounce.
Yeah, it's a lot of seasonal passes is what I call
it. Right,
and
those are like the two qualifications, I think, is that you have to have gainful employment or you have to have like health insurance are the big ones for the visa program. And if you don't have that, they deport you, right?
To my understanding, yeah. And I should know more about that than I do. One of the last prison I worked at was a half and half. It was actually a third. So a third of our lockups, well, not even a third, but a small portion of them were like local lockups, like DUIs, people who got locked up from the county. Then you had felony lockups that we got from all over the place: Virginia, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, wherever. And then the big chunk were people who were facing deportation. Those were not inmates. You could not call them inmates. You had to call them detainees. If you called them an inmate, you got fired. And I actually tried really hard to help a lot of them maintain their citizenship. Like one of them was a guy who was adopted in Germany, and his dad brought him back to the States. And for those who don't know, there was a big fire in Germany where a bunch of records got destroyed, like military records were destroyed. There was this huge fire, and his records of him being adopted and being brought to the United States by this dude who was in the military were gone. He had lived in the United States for 40 years, gone to school, got a diploma, went to college, and he was being deported because they were like, oh, this guy doesn't have paperwork. And so like I was helping people like him and, other people like fight to see their attorneys and their agents that were their immigration agents and all that other stuff. So I should know more about it than I do, but like you said, or like I said, I've worked a lot of jobs.
Yeah, dude, you're wearing a lot of hats here. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire for knowing every detail.
Yeah, it was a lot. But yeah,
I just Claudia, it was just fucked up that they're not telling these people like, yo,
yeah,
you could be,
dude. And Claudia really, I in all honesty, I look at Claudia as like a hero, dude. She saved a bunch of people, I feel like, because all I can imagine is like these older employees, like the ones who are in their 50s and their 60s that are working there, it's harder for them to keep up with stuff. And I'm not trying to say that, older people can't keep up with everything going on in the news. It's just, they generally have more important things they're worrying about. Abuela's not worried about what Uncle Sam's got to say, Abuela, and, she's worrying about her family, and so it's easy for them to miss it. And I think Claudia doing that really, really gave everybody an opportunity to prepare themselves to be represented when it came time for them to be like, look, I'm working. They're taking federal taxes out of this check, so this should count. And they did. They took federal taxes out, but it was still federally illegal. And then we had an issue where banks weren't taking our money.
That's just a funny one, isn't it? They're taking your
Yeah.
taxes, but it's still illegal.
Right. And then banks would not, there were multiple banks that would not take paychecks from Trulieve. And so people had nowhere for their money to go. That was a problem. I remember that. And then finally they caved
Nice.
and started taking it. And then like a year later, we had to go over a month without paychecks because of an issue with the system. And so we already only got paid twice a month. And sometimes it was 21 days between checks. Sometimes it was like 18 days between checks. You never really knew.
That's
And
fun.
yeah, so you're always having to like guess on when you're paying your bills, and your overtime was always messed up. Like you have 80, like I could pull those things and I could show you. You have 84 hours of regular time, 16 hours of overtime, where you have 91 regular hours and 4 hours of overtime, and you're like, the math ain't mathin'.
Yeah, what?
Math is not mathin'. And that was a big issue too. But when they went, and there was over a month or a little more than a month where we didn't get paid. And they were like, why is everyone quitting? Because Kim's sitting there with a maid in her house, more than multiple vehicles. And I'm pretty sure that she had like 2 or 3 Teslas, and going on vacations and traveling the world. These people now have no electricity, no groceries, and no gas in their vehicles, and their insurance is going to expire in 3 days. That might be why. Just maybe you should have a backup system in place for something like that.
Did that sound effect play on your end?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay, I queued one up on the board. I had a sad trombone. I was just trying to these new pads out. Sorry. Yeah. Yo, that's fucked up though. What was the other thing I wanted to ask you about the security, like how the security was for like delivery drivers and shit.
Drivers
like that.
had none, 0 security. So the buildings themselves have razor wire or barbed wire surrounding the facility. And at the time, I think they've changed it, but at the time there was a third-party security company, because it was cheaper for them to carry firearms at the gates for insurance purposes. And that was really our only line of defense, was one dude sitting at a gatehouse with a pistol. And that was it. I mean, that was all you had. There was generally one more security person somewhere on the site. Never really knew where, unless you were at Ben Bostic. Then they were inside the building right through the front door. But so that was all the security we had, was one dude with a pistol at the gate. And they were actually instructed to not use their firearm unless they absolutely have to, but to instead call the police. Granted, my favorite instance was where a dude rode up on a bicycle and threatened to shoot the security officer, and the police show up and they tell him to take his backpack off, and he was like, well, can I let my friends go first? Dude was out of his mind. And they were like, what? And he opens his backpack, and he's got like 6 little turtles, like 6 baby turtles in his backpack. And he's like, be free, little buddies. And he's letting them go. And I'm just standing there, and I'm like, what the hell is this place? And one of the guys looks over and he goes, Florida. It's Florida.
So what about so that's on-site security. So the drivers just got nothing, huh?
Nothing.
So who does the deliveries?
Just regular drivers. So the way it works is the drivers, they'll rotate out. So sometimes they'll be doing like plant runs or chemical runs or nutrient runs from Ben Bostic to Higdon, or Ben Bostic to Juniper Creek, or Juniper Creek to Jeffco, whatever. And the other group of drivers will drive vans, and they will drive down to places like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, wherever the dispensaries are, and they will deliver the finished product. But the other drivers driving the box trucks will have like plants, like, baby flowers, depending on their stage of growth. And I never could understand why you would take plants from one building, one site, really, load them into a box truck and ship them to another site to go to another stage of growth, when you have rooms designated for that level of growth or that age point of the plant on that site. It's just an unnecessary risk.
They're doing like flower and veg at different locations and transporting.
Yeah, well, you had flower and veg at each site, but for whatever reason, sometimes they would take flower from building A or site A and take it to site B, C, D, or E, or they would do the opposite from site D to site A. And sometimes that means you got plants on a reefer truck for, over an hour traveling between Jefferson County and Quincy, Florida. And that's dangerous because all it takes is for one person to look for that truck, and everyone knows what those trucks are. They're not stupid, and decide that day that they're tired of being broke. And that's all it would take. We had the instance with our drivers getting shot at. Claudia addressed that last week.
Yeah, have there been any robberies or any?
Yeah, they shot at the drivers, and they tried to, but luckily the drivers were able to call it in and keep driving. Claudia told them just to keep driving, and they got to a rest stop where there was police, and I'm not sure what happened after all that. Claudia would be able to tell you, but I wasn't. She actually got to see the footage of the bullets hitting the vehicle and stuff like that, the gunfire and everything. Those guys were given. Those guys drove back, reloaded the stuff onto a new truck or a new van, whatever, and finished their route, and then were given 2 days of administrative leave and then told to come straight back. And I'm like, dude, no, 2 days? I get shot at and you give me 2 days? No, man. You better give me like.
And it's like Saturday and Sunday. It's like the weekend too.
Right. Oh yeah, those 2 days you already had scheduled off. Just take them off. Just take them off.
Damn, that's intense. We haven't seen any of that up here in Vermont, thank God, yet. But I imagine in every big city, you probably have some robbery attempts happening.
Yeah. And the sad thing is I didn't get to get too far into that because they eventually split up my department away from the drivers and stuff, because used to we operated like with just an open door between us, and it was an office where a wall had been put up, but the door was still there. So, anything that was happening over there, we knew about, and anything that was happening over here, they knew about, which was actually really nice because working in logistics and material handling, I could be like, hey, do you have a driver at Higdon right now? We need nutrients at building such and such, like now. And they could go ahead and just do it instead of having to do everything over cell phones. Cause we didn't have company phones. Everything was done over your personal cell phone. And like, I still have a plethora of phone numbers of former people that used to work. I used to work with Trulieve or work with at Trulieve. Man, I'm just got the brain drain today. But I still got their phone numbers and all that stuff. But everything was done over Outlook and your personal phone, and you didn't get comped for it either, which really, really ticked me off. I'm like, dude, I'm using my personal phone like after hours for work. Like, y'all gonna help pay my bill or what? I did an international call to New Zealand one time, and it cost me like $68 trying to order a part for this huge tank. Yeah, because it was long distance, and it cost me like 60 something bucks, and I never got comped for that. I'm still mad about that.
That was the worst fucking thing you told me this whole time.
I was so mad. I was just like, dude, really? Like, you guys don't pay me enough, and now I got to shell out $68 because I found a part for you guys. Like, it
sounded like a lot of ticky tacky shit like that too. It sounded like maybe being late or stuff like that could get you in trouble. I think there was some.
They had a point system. If you were not, by the time I left, the way it worked is if you did not clock in 15 minutes early. So if you were scheduled for 8, if you were not clocked in by 7:45, you were late. And if you were late, you got half a point. And if you missed a day, you got a whole point. So a lot of people looked at it as, well, if I clock in late because there's a line at the time clock, then I might as well just take the whole day off because I'm going to get hit with a half a point anyway. Might as well just take the whole point and go home. And the problem with that is I believe it was after 5 points, you were terminated, and points stayed on your record for 365 days. And if you had points, goodbye to getting promoted. You're not getting promoted. You can't transfer departments. I was in 2020, I was going through a divorce, a really, really ugly divorce. And so I'm not really all there. I'm not firing on all cylinders. My brain is preoccupied with, my kid and trying to make sure I can see her and everything. And I had days where I was breaking down, between, these carts and stuff. I would just kind of drop down and dude, people can judge me how they want to, but I'd sit there and I'd cry. But, I was coming in a little late and everything. And, and I begged them. I was like, look, can I please? I said, I don't even care if it's paid. I said, I'll take unpaid time off. Can I please just have a week to go home and just kind of process what's happening in my life? No. And I'm sitting there literally crying in the office and I'm begging him. I was like, look, I don't care if it's not paid. Like, I need some kind of emergency leave. I need time off. And they're like, well, you can file for FMLA, and which I did, but it took over 2 months to go through. But at that point, I was done with the department. I ran that whole department for a year, and they brought in some other dude to run the department and actually take over as a manager instead of giving it to me, even though I ran that department by myself for a year without a team for a year. And after that, I was like, I don't want to be in this department anymore. I don't want to work in materials anymore. I want to drive. I want to be a driver. And drivers are short. They were begging for people. And the management in the drive team was begging, please give us James. Please give us James. Because they've seen me working until 8, 9 o'clock at night. You know, because that was not an abnormal thing for me. I'd be out there till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, riding the forklift, just doing late deliveries so everybody's ready for tomorrow, or doing good receipt purchase orders before I went home, or doing purchase requisitions before I went home. And so they knew that if they needed somebody to work overtime, that I would do it. But they were like, oh, James has got points. He can't transfer. And then they were like, if you don't want to be in this department, you need to get out of it. Kevin, you kept me from doing it 2 weeks ago. I've been trying to be on the drive team for like 4 months now. But yeah, because I had points, I couldn't do it. Or like the girl who was hit, she was in an accident where she was hit by a school bus in her car. She got half a point. And so she said, screw it, I'm going home. And so they gave her a whole point.
Ridiculous. I remember that.
And then the girl who hydroplaned right in front of the gate and hit the trees, she got half a point, for being late. I was like, wow, dude, this is classy. This is exactly what I picture when I think healthy work environment. And there was also an instance where an employee was arrested outside of building 1, JF1. I remember I was outside, and then I saw like 6 squad vehicles roll up, like SUVs, like sheriff's deputies. And I didn't really think anything of it at first, because a lot of times they'd give tours to like local law enforcement, show them what we do here, just kind of showing off. And then they got out, and everybody's wearing bulletproof vests for what I thought was a tour. And I'm like, this is suspicious. And suddenly they grabbed this employee who was always very well dressed. He was one of the only people I know that wore a button-up shirt. Like, he's not a manager. He's not a supervisor. He's not a lead. He's just a regular employee. He did plant inventory. But he was arrested. And you can't find anything about that in the news. Supposedly, allegedly, the reason that this happened was because someone found out he was going to wait for everyone to go to lunch, and he was going to start gunning people down in the parking lot. Because the way it works is at Trulieve, the only place I know of that has a break room where you can eat is Higdon. So everyone else at every other site, Ben Bostic, everywhere, because everybody goes to lunch around the same time, has to eat in their car. You don't get to sit in an air-conditioned room and eat. You're sitting in your car in the sun in the North Florida heat, eating your lunch. Oh, by the way, you can't smoke in your car. You can't vape in your car. Yeah, you can't smoke or vape in your car. You had to go to a designated smoking spot that was uncovered on a plastic picnic table way out there, way out in the middle of nowhere.
You get spent half your lunch break walking to the table to get.
You'd spend a chunk of your lunch break trying to get out to the table. Not only that, you would look like my face right now. You'd be sunburnt, And by the time you came back, you offered a single cigarette, and it's like, dude, you mean to tell me I can't smoke in my car? I can't vape in my car? No. Luckily, by the time that was all rolling out, like, they started that, and I was gone within like 4 months. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'd sit there and I had my big boy vape right here. And I'd sit there and I would look at him just like, please tell me I can't vape in my car. I'm not walking out there. Look, man, I'm pigmentally challenged. Okay. I'm super white. Okay.
Yo, I'm definitely too white to be out there.
Right. I like to tell people I'm a mayonnaise sandwich served on white bread on a styrofoam plate in the middle of a blizzard with a glass of milk white. So I don't tan, I blister. So I'm not going out there. It's hot. And I would just sit there and they knew it too. And they knew that if they were to fire me, they would be up straight without a paddle. because I was the person who taught everybody how to use SAP. I was the one that trained everybody in the other states how to use SAP, how to do purchase recs, and that could give forklift certifications whenever, because health and safety was always stretched thin. They couldn't give forklift certifications. And so I'm just sitting there and like, fire me if you like. If you ever seen Futurama, I was like Scruffy, fire me if you dare. Just
right. Scruffy here for it.
Scruffy's gonna die the way he lived. Oh, marmalade.
Damn. Well, I'm glad we can laugh about it, because this shit is not funny, dude.
Oh, dude, comedy is like the only way I get through all of this stuff, and it's how I got through dealing with Trulieve, is the way that I did. It was being funny, which worked out great, because being funny like that made people comfortable talking to me about stuff that made them mad, which allowed me to approach.
It's like you're on to my whole game plan here, James.
Well, it made people. It helped people feel comfortable telling me what was wrong, because everybody's worried about getting fired, except me. Dude, I was in the Marine Corps. I worked with machine guns and explosives, and people like Sergeant Major Castle. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but if you've ever seen the pictures of the 3 Marines in Iraq, where the one dude's got his arms around 2 Marines and he's holding a pistol and he's being carried out of a house, the guy carrying the pistol, he ended up, I believe he got a Silver Star, but his name is Sergeant Major Castle. I got to work with people like him. I'm not worried about people like Jeremy Davis. You put your britches on one leg at a time, just like I do. Unless you're doing front flips into your pants in the morning, you get dressed just like me. I'm not worried about you. And so people would come to me with gripes. And because I didn't care, I would, and I'd just open it up. Oh, y'all aren't busy. You're playing Candy Crush. And so I'd sit down and I'd be like, hey guys, I need to talk to you about something. And Kyle, who was one step above JD, he didn't really care. Kyle knew that I was all about getting stuff done and trying to help people. JD, on the other hand, he was not a very nice person. He was like Hitler reincarnate, and if Kim Rivers was Hitler, he would be Goebbels, the propaganda minister, and he is not a nice person, and he always got an attitude about stuff like that. But I'm like, look, dude, people are upset. We have an 86% turnover rate, and this is why. And so I want to stop turnover, because look, personally, I'm tired of being short-staffed. Damn it,
yeah, that's fucking a lot, dude.
Yeah, it was like 86.8% turnover rate, and I was tired of being short-staffed. I want to go home at 5 o'clock. I'm tired, and I'm outside all day. It's hot. I'm sweaty. I'm burnt. I want to go home. I want to lay down. And then, so I'm tired of hiring people, training them for 2 weeks, and then them never coming back. They'll go to lunch, and then poof, you never see them again. They don't even come back for their check. They're just gone. And
didn't you even say you were like buying water for people, like buying cases of water?
Yeah, I would go for my team. I would go in. When I worked at Ben Bostic, we were right across the street from a gas station. And so I would drive to the gas station or the Dollar General, because you had a gas station here and a DG there. And so I would drive to one of those, and I would go buy Gatorades. I would buy them, like all of my guys smoked. Well, most of them. So I would go and I would buy whatever kind of cigarettes they smoked, whether it was Black & Milds. I would get the type that they smoked, whereas the Jazzes or the Watermelon or it didn't matter. Or if they smoked Marlboros, I'd go buy them a pack of Marlboros, Newports, whatever. And I would bring them Gatorades and stuff, because it's hot, and there's 2 water fountains at Ben Bostic. Neither one of them my team can access without dressing up, without putting on suits. And my team doesn't have time to go put on.
You don't even have access to fucking drinking water.
Yeah, unless you want to drink out of the sink, which I did more than once. And so I would go buy this stuff for my team. That way they could work and hydrate at the same time. And when Hurricane Michael came through, Kim Rivers brings her single case of water to be the saving grace of Trulieve. And that was when she was just like, get the case of water out of my car. I didn't know who she was.
Probably didn't even carry it. She get some other guy.
Yeah, she just did this right here. She did it to me. And I'm sweating. And I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, who the and before I can finish that, Tom, my manager, slaps his hand over my mouth and he goes, do you know who that is? No, I don't know who that is. And frankly, I don't give a damn. And he's like, that's Kim. And I was like, who's Kim? Kim Jong-il who? Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, that's Kim Rivers. She's the CEO. She could be the CEO, the PCIE, the FBI, the AEB. I don't care. No. And he's like, look, just get the water out of her car. She'll leave you alone. So I went and I dropped off this single case of water, and that was supposed to be enough for the employees at Ben Bostic. And I was like, what a slap in the face. And so we worked with the those of us on the ground, went to the Piggly Wiggly, who was on the other side of the chain link fence. And we were like, yo, can we get some pallets of water? Like, we're right next door, bro. We're your neighbor. Can we get some water? And they were like, yeah. So they gave us like 3 pallets of water. And she got so pissed because we drove the forklifts on about 20 foot of paved road that was an offshoot of the actual like highway that went through town. So it's not even a busy road. Like, the only people who go there are people who work at Trulieve, like, because the Trulieve driveway is right there. And so for the 20 feet to go from their driveway and make a U into their driveway, or from our driveway to theirs, that was apparently a big no-no. But I'm like, bro, nobody in this part of the state has electricity or running water.
Yeah, you said
I don't know.
Did you say that did you go to work during this hurricane?
Yeah, they had people stay overnight. Supposedly, I don't know because I didn't talk to anybody, but the rumor was people that stayed overnight during the hurricane were comped financially.
Which hurricane was this? Do you remember?
Michael. This hurricane, the one that was super bad, and people in Quincy, Florida, without power for like 6 or 7 months. It was bad. Yeah, I've got pictures and video. My drive to work, that 136-mile drive, I would say, if I ballparked it, I'd say out of 136 miles, around 85 of it, 80 to 85 miles, were in a ditch. Because there's just trees and power lines everywhere. There was actually, I remember specifically, there was a police officer who was trapped in his house because he had down power lines all over the place. It was bad. I had a tree laying on my office, so I couldn't even go in through the front door of the office to get my laptop. And they were like, don't go in there. But then they got mad at me for not doing my job because my laptop's inside. And so I just said, screw it. I went in the back door and I come out with my laptop and they're like, did you go in there? No, it just poofed in my hand. But I'm going to go work now. Bye. And so I went and I did my job. But yeah, I got a picture of that too, that big old oak tree laying on the building. But yeah, Hurricane Michael was heinous. It was bad. Before the hurricane got there, we were actually out there bolting sheet metal to the parking lot to keep it from flying away because we had nowhere to put it. So we're out there with drills, just drilling it into the ground so it wouldn't go anywhere. It was really, really ratchet, man. It was not professional in the slightest. Same thing with the tornado that came through. I was outside. I sent my team in the warehouse. I was like, go in there. Do not come out. Like, if you hear knocking and I don't scream that it's me, don't open it. It's probably like a tree branch hitting the building. Please don't open it. And so I'm out there trying to like get all this stuff ready. And I'm on this ATV, this little like mule, and just trying to like go through it. I'm like getting chains and anything that can fly away. And I'm just like loading it up, just slinging it. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh man, it's a tornado. But yeah, they sent all the employees into like the bathrooms for all of like 10 minutes. And then they made everybody go back to work while the tornado's still headed to us because they're like, well, we've got time. And so we don't want you to waste time sitting in here. So y'all need to go back to work. And if it gets more severe, we'll pull you back into the bathrooms.
Did they do any kind of hurricane special?
Yeah, it's the Get special. No, but it was bad, dude. And Trulieve always made it feel like the plants were more important than the people were, and it sucked. It was like, dude, this plant is 1, insured. 2, we literally have thousands of them, and we have clones of each one. So yeah, we're fine. If we lose a room because of a tornado, or we lose a whole building because of a tornado, who cares? We literally have identical clones of these very plants located at Higdon in the clone room. They're there. They're safe.
Yeah, we can lose this question. Like,
exactly. Like,
get the fuck out of there and evacuate. Like,
yeah, they wouldn't let people go home either. That was, and there was a couple of people that just up and left. You know, you got those people that are like, I'm out, deuces, and then bye. You know, hey, if y'all want to give me a point, give me a point. But if I want to die, I'm down with my baby. And they leave. But, you know, your average person is scared to lose their job.
Fair.
Yeah, you know, your average person is scared to lose their job because, you know, got to pay bills and stuff. But you got those people who, hey, they got that safety net. Bye. And they leave. Me, on the other hand, I was just like, look, dude, I get to be the one guy out in a friggin' tornado trying to make this all work. You know, it was great. It was a good time. I always shine really well during chaos, and the tornadoes and stuff are really no exception. I actually, and now that I don't work for Trulieve, I have no problem saying it, but I did call OSHA after that, after the tornado thing. Because as fun as it was to be riding around in a mule during a tornado and all of that other stuff, it's not safe for work. And it was not, if it had been just me they asked, I really wouldn't have cared. But when they were demanding that my team go out there and I had to fight against my manager and tell him essentially to fuck off, I was like, yeah, I'm calling OSHA. I'm calling OSHA. And as soon as everybody was locked away, so like while the tornado is going on, I call OSHA. I'm just like, hey, just so you guys know. And Trulieve was like, or OSHA was like, well, technically, since the employees were inside these sheet metal buildings, it was safe, bro. You can, if you punch this sheet metal hard enough, you can put a hole through it.
I was gonna say, dude.
Yeah, if you're that guy, it can be done. It's just sheet metal. That's it. It's sheet metal. There's no insulation, no like wood. It's just sheet metal on those buildings at Jeffco, and I'm like, yeah, that's totally safe. You know, sheet metal becomes essentially a flying guillotine in tornadoes.
I was going to say that if a tree comes ripping through there, now you just got shards of fucking.
Yeah, it's a really dangerous environment to be in, and yeah. But so they got off on that one, but yeah, they definitely got fined by OSHA. The Higdon site got fined by OSHA for not providing respirators back in 2019, maybe 2020. They got fined like $36,000.
Really? And then a woman dies up in Holyoke last year.
I have a friend of mine that I actually got a job at Trulieve. I got her hired, and she had to move around a couple departments. And when they put her in dry, she developed asthma. As a grown adult with no history of asthma symptoms, she now has to carry an inhaler. She hasn't worked for Trulieve in almost 3 years. She's still, matter of fact, today she was bitching about having to refill her inhaler. That she now has to have with her full time since she worked at the dry in Trulieve. Wow. And when she tried to get that taken care of while she worked there, they fired her. Wow. There was a health and safety employee by the name of Sunday Tate, Sundee, that was fighting really, really hard to help this other person I'm talking about. And eventually someone from up the chain was like, no, fire her.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Her name is Marissa. I don't know if she wants her last name put out there, but yeah, her name is Marissa. And I feel super bad for her. You know, she's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. And now on top of being a single mom with 2 kids, she is now a single mom with 2 kids that can't breathe and has to carry an inhaler everywhere.
Isn't Kim Rivers always bragging about how much they support women and sort of like minorities, and now they're like paying people shit wages and getting women sick and firing?
Love of hypocrisy. That's the Kim Rivers is. If you were to look up hypocrite, Kim Rivers' face is right there. Absolute hypocrite.
What about I forgot, like bugs. Did you ever see any kind of bug infestation?
Spider mites out the wazoo. I think I talked about this last week as well. There was this employee, her name is, we'll call her Cassie, was told to take photos with her phone and take pictures of the spider mites and send it to the site manager. So she did. And then she got wrote up for using her phone to take pictures of the product. And the infestation was super bad. She worked in dry. The infestation was awful. Like normally you can't really see spider mites if you're not paying attention, but they were everywhere. It was just like moving all over the bud. It was disgusting. And so instead of dumping the batches, they were like, send them to extraction. They'll get extracted through ethyl extraction. So everyone who smoked the pods, like the little vape pods and the shatter and stuff that where the THC is extracted via ethyl extraction. Yeah, it's got spider mites in it. It's they're like, well, it gets purified through the ethyl. No, dude. I don't care. I literally do not care. It's gross. And
that's disgusting.
Yeah, it was disgusting. But like they just wouldn't throw it away. But it's crazy because at one point they were wasting bud for no reason, which I have a picture of that I wasn't supposed to take a picture of, but I did anyway because I thought it was absolutely atrocious. Because I'm like, dude, there's so much weed being thrown away right here. I could take this whole bin and I could change my life. I could change my life. I could pay off all my debts with the amount that's being thrown away. And then I'll like the amount that they threw away for stupid stuff. Like, so when they would harvest, they would run this piece of plastic underneath the plant. So if the buds fall, they fall on the plastic. Well, for some reason, for the period of about 2-3 weeks, if that happened, if it fell on that plastic, throw it away. Throw it away. We don't know why they did it. That rule come out of left field. And to be honest, I was like, this is dumb. Like the weed we should throw away.
Even putting the plastic down if you're
exactly. Exactly. We're just pissing away money at this point. And I feel like what it is what we don't know. I feel like they were probably being investigated and didn't want to say anything. And that was why they did it, because they threw away so much. I was like, oh, I don't smoke weed. You know, I think I was probably like one of maybe 10 employees in Trulieve that didn't smoke weed. You know, I don't really like the way it makes me feel. So it's not for me. Now, I love that people do it and they get away from pills and stuff, because I watch pills destroy people in my family, you know, and we would get like thank you notes on some of the returns when I was doing returns. Somebody slipped a $50 bill in one of them with a thank you note saying, I want to appreciate you, or tell you guys that I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I looked at it and I looked at Tom and I was like, what do I do with this? He's like, keep it. Say less. Say less. But so it was really cool to see that, and how people would, we'd get people's stories about how, oh, I got off of so many pills and, this and this. I went from taking 4 medications a day to, I got my sativa and now I'm fine, and, or I got my indica, whatever, my strawberry switchblade or my pineapple upside down cake or my Florida man or whatever they wanted to call it,
Blue bomb or dumpster haze.
Yeah, my
cake.
Perp 5G. Matter of fact, I think Perp 5G was the one we set the record with like highest percentage of concentration of THC in a single plant. That actually came out of the Jefferson County building 4, I think is where it came out of. And that was pretty cool because we beat a company in Germany with that one. We were like, oh yeah, dude. But it was like something in the neighborhood of like 37%. Just, and a lot of people are like, well, that's not high. It's like, this is from the bud before anything is done with it. And yeah, that was pretty cool. But it was a really weird environment, man. Because I love the people that I worked with, like all of the lower level and mid-level people, with the exception of one dude, I absolutely loved. I loved to pieces. The upper, like once you hit manager, like official manager status, I can think of one out of all of those managers that were up there. I can think of one that I liked and that I knew would go to bat for her people. And once you got anywhere beyond that, you were trash. You were absolute scum of the earth, because you were the reason Trulieve was the way it was. And everyone was scared to talk to Kim Rivers about stuff. And that's why things were the way they were. You couldn't tell her that we
call in Kim.
Right. Call in Kim, because everyone was scared to bring stuff up to her, because I guess she was worried that they would fire her. I had to throw away a purse. I forgot about this. When I first got hired, there was a purse.
I got a fucking t-shirt for you, Kim. Wait. There we go, Kim. Yeah, just for you. It's medium. Looks like I might fit.
But so when I first got hired, there was this purse and like some personal belongings and stuff. And I was like, who does this belong to? And they were like, oh, it's Kim Rivers' former assistant. And I was like, oh, why did she leave her purse? Because look, I got 3 sisters. They don't go anywhere without their purses, And they were like, well, she told Kim an idea was stupid, and Kim had her escorted off of the property, wouldn't even let her get her personal belongings. And she hasn't been back to get her purse, so you're going to need to throw it away. Like, her wallet was in there. I was like, what?
Throw it away.
Yeah, I ain't going to lie. There were $6 in quarters in there. I took them $6 in quarters. Look, it was going in the dumpster. It's just like, whatever. But yeah, she wouldn't even let her get her personal effects. All because she told her an idea was stupid. Oh, she didn't even tell Kim. I'm sorry. She told Frank, who was the head of security, and Frank told Kim, and Kim had her fired.
Was he Mother Teresa?
Mother Teresa was actually, Mother Teresa came in after, like a year after that. Mother Teresa was legit. She was definitely a saving grace for a lot of the female employees out there that were being sexually harassed by a guy named Daniel, who was the supervisor for the dry team at the time. Her and I worked in tandem together. I gathered I brought it to her attention. I gathered the information, and I presented it to her, and then she was the one that contacted all of the appropriate people up the food chain, who also seemed kind of pissed off that we did that, because they were like, well, you're doing all this on company time. Oh yeah. You got employees being sexually harassed at work. So yeah, we're gonna address it at work. Like, are you dumb? But yeah, and so she got the nickname Mother Teresa, because when they told her to quit making a big stink about it, she was like, no, I mean, you can fire me, but if you do, everyone's gonna know. And she was dead serious. I was like, go Teresa, go.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's nice that there was some good people there that you got to work with, because you know, it does seem like a lot of well-intentioned people are getting into the industry, and it's just being managed and operated by a bunch of fucking dickhead, you know, Chads and Kims.
Yeah, well, it's being run by a bunch of oligarchs, people who are already wealthy, who already don't care about the lower class, who already don't care about the middle class. They could not give any less of a shit about these people, but they give off the whole, oh, we're here to give an absolute upward hand to the lower communities and ensure that they have a better way of life, a better quality of life, and we're here to provide that for them.
Kick you the fuck out without your purse if you have a fucking comment about it.
Right. And you know, it's all about image, but behind the scenes you're beheading people for the revolution, you know.
Behind the scenes, her husband is in federal prison for bribing public officials.
Bribing and threatening. Yeah, if I remember correctly, he threatened those FBI agents too. That was actually the big kicker that got him arrested. And then there was the whole fiasco where Kim supposedly was bullying people out of properties so that her friends could buy the properties in Tallahassee. Again, this is all allegedly.
Doesn't her husband own some kind of property
construction company? Yeah. His company did the construction at Trulieve. So Trulieve paid her husband to build its own buildings.
Imagine that.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. This weird little circle. And everybody at Trulieve was like, dude, they got married, so if they ever got arrested, they couldn't testify against each other.
That is what happened, right? Like a couple weeks before the trial, they got married.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, hold on, let me get my tinfoil hat here, but I
bet she doesn't know nothing about it. Like I said, it's like Nancy Pelosi. She just doesn't, no clue how her husband keeps hitting these jackpot on every trade he makes.
Right? It's just crazy, just so coincidental, just amazing.
James, I've run about to the end of my list here. I want to first just fucking thank you for your time here. This has been a fantastic discussion, but I also want to ask you if we fucking missed anything, or if you have any shameless shout outs or plugs. I always leave the last word for my guest here. And thanks again for your time, dude. This has been fantastic.
Dude, anytime I got a chance to get some kind of justice put out there for the people that are still trapped there, still working there, and to put out what's actually happening behind the scenes, behind this whole hearts and minds lovey-dovey image that Trulieve puts off, I'm all about it, because I want to expose everything that's out there with every corporation that does shady stuff. You know, you can't preach peace in one hand but be committing war crimes in the background, you know, like that's not okay. And so any chance I get to talk about it, especially after they falsely told me that I burned bridges and couldn't be rehired, I'm showing them what burnt bridges look like. But you know, like this is a burnt bridge, you know, like I didn't just burn it, I blew it up, you know, that bridge is gone. And you know, but yeah, it was just I remember we had an instance where the Latino employees felt so mistreated that they were smearing feces on the porta potties that they had, because they didn't have bathrooms at the outdoor grows. They had porta potties. So you're out there in the heat all day and you can't even use the bathroom in the air condition. You have to sit in a 100 plus degree porta john, and it sucked. And that was their little way of like rebelling. They ended up having to send out like 2 or 3 people from HR to address that. People were, you know, and more people quit because of that. And it was just anytime that people would bring stuff to HR that was like serious, they would get fired. No explanation, because it's a right to work state. And for those who don't know, right to work technically means right to terminate. It was just called right to work because it sounded good.
Fucking reason at any point.
Exactly, with no repercussions to the company, and
which is pretty much every state now, I believe.
Yeah, and it's terrible. It is an awful way to do business. Oh, well, you
Right.
need to give us a 2-week notice before you quit. Well, you need to give me a 2-week notice if you're going to
Fuck
lay me
my
off.
boss, dude. Yeah,
Right. I got bills to pay.
that's
You guys have stacked up profits. But
fucking 2-week notice.
right. Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I unless the company's really nice to me, I'm not giving a 2-week notice. If I go to work and you're treating me like dog I will just go home and not come back, and I will not answer the phone. Like my voicemail would be indicative of my intention of to not return. I will leave some petty voicemail message. If this is so and so calling from the human resources department, I'm here to let you know that I shall not be returning to work. Please do not contact me. But yeah, no, but overall, it was just an EPA nightmare. It was an OSHA nightmare. It was a safety nightmare. The fact that I had to threaten to call OSHA to get them to bolt down the racks in the little warehouse in Jefferson County, because the dude in charge of maintenance didn't want to have his guys do it. They wanted to do it. The actual maintenance dudes, they wanted to, but they couldn't pull the trigger without their boss saying, yeah. And I had to threaten to call OSHA, and he's on the phone just cussing me for all I'm worth. And I'm like, dude, I don't care, bro. You look like you wake up with a burrito in your mouth. Shut up. Like, I'm not concerned with you, dude. And that's how the management there handles business. They yell at employees. They think that they can bully employees, and it makes me so happy to see people coming up and even talking anonymously. People that are still employees talking about how they still have a movement going, trying to
Alex
make
Miller,
things happen.
word up to Alex. Yeah, I like that kid.
Right. And it's
Danny
just
Carson too.
yeah, and it's awesome to see because it needs to happen, and their voices need to be heard, and their concerns need to be heard, and Trulieve needs to be held accountable for things they're doing now and things they've done in the past. You know, just because it was 3 years ago, I mean, we're still going after people from tweets they made 10 years ago, you know, jokes they made 10 years ago. Why is Trulieve allowed to get away with something that they're still doing because they deal in weed? You know, just because it's cannabis. Oh, I don't know, man. I like my blunts too much. Okay, well, go to somebody else. Go to somebody else that's not having people die at their job.
Someone died. Yeah, dude. Like that was really. It was like, come on, people don't die in this fucking.
Go somewhere
industry.
where there's not blood weed. You know, they got blood diamonds. Go somewhere where there's no blood weed. You know, that's what they need to start calling Trulieve. They need it's blood weed. It's the blood diamonds of cannabis. You know, you got people literally dying to give you your product, and it's a plant, man. I'm like, no,
maybe we could whack that up into a meme somehow.
Right? Just put it on a shirt. Have like a pot leaf with blood dripping off the bottom of it. Yeah.
Like a
Blood
Zelda,
weed.
like a draining heart that's just at the bottom. Like,
right.
Trulieve, good to the last drop.
Blood, sweat, and tears, literally.
Well, James, dude, that's all I got. I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I hope you're safe out there, and I hope that the meanies don't come to be mean to you. I really appreciate you coming forward, man. We really need people like you to help expose this shit. And,
man. If
it's
somebody, the best part about leadership is taking the first step. You got to be where the metal meets the meat, and if that means I got to get hit by a van in the middle of nowhere, then well, at least it's making a stand.
I hope you don't get hit by a van. Maybe a motorcycle or something.
Right. I'm a little too hard-headed. I think I'll be okay.
Cool. Well, I'm going to sign it off. Guys, thanks for watching. There's only a few people, but I appreciate you. Remember, the devil is in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Peace. Bang.